Welcome. I'm Brad Miller here with Jason Medford, and today on the podcast, we're going to talk about
Signs. Signs. Everywhere there's signs. Now I can do it that way, or I can go.
that's a creepy way, though, if you do it that way. So you
That's a creepy way. Signs
there you
everywhere.
go.
There's signs blocking out the scenery, block and do this, don't do that. Hey, can't you read the signs? All right, everybody who's listening, we just hit record and go. I didn't rehearse that beforehand. I should have pulled out my
Obviously,
guitar and practice a little bit. But Brad was like, hey, this song just popped in my head, right? And so signs, uh,
yeah.
originally from the 5-man electrical band. So I had to look that up really quick. I was always brought up on the Tesla version. But yeah, so 5-man electrical band to begin with, but that's a very interesting song. So Brad, why are we talking about signs today? We're not talking about billboards on the side of the freeway, right?
I mean, we could. I mean, you could argue that sometimes the signs are like billboard size.
Sometimes they are.
But to that point, actually, what we're talking about today is how you can tell what a sign, what's actually a sign for you, what's actually a message, something you're supposed to be picking up, and what's just kind of that little voice in your head of fear. What's that the one that's trying to keep you safe? That's something that's saying, hey, we're not sure what about this. This is something different. This is kind of scary. Or just, your mind saying, do this, do that, because it's fun. And, but what's an actual sign? How can you tell what that is?
Yeah, because I think it's an important part on a spiritual path, right? Because again, I mean, if you're on this path, you're trying to, communicate more with the universe, receive messages, right, for your higher learning, to teach you, to help provide you with guidance, right, depending on what you're doing. And I think it is important, because literally sometimes it can be a billboard on the side of the freeway, right? That something on that billboard means something to you at that point in time. But yeah, how do we differentiate between something that is actually coming from the universe versus something that we're just thinking about because we want it to happen? And so we're looking, and using cognitive biases to kind of justify what we want to do from a 3D perspective, right? So this is kind of interesting, on how you can do it. So I guess we need to talk a little bit about how we're kind of going along with this. And again, like Brad and I have told you before, we are not perfect. We are on this path too. We have not figured this out completely.
Much like this podcast, in fact, we've not figured this out completely. We're still
like I should have rehearsed that song before I started singing, but it's one of these things that our whole life we're learning and we're getting better at receiving the guidance, right? And of course, when you receive the guidance, you got to do something about it, or the guidance is going to stop talking to you. But yeah, let's talk about. So Brad, I don't know if you want to kind of share maybe a little bit how you're starting to see the signs more. I know we talked about like a little real life example that you just had.
Yeah, I think that probably real life examples are the best way to kind of talk about this, kind of what we've seen, to help people kind of decide what is that actually look like when it's a sign. So gosh, it would have been back in the beginning of March, I think, sometime, because there was St. Patrick's Day stuff around. So we were out shopping with my family, my wife and my daughter, and we were in the little strip mall area. And inside the strip mall, there is a dollar store. And as we're driving, I was like, let's stop. I'd kind of like to go in that dollar store. And something inside my head said, yeah, we need some candles. I wasn't sure, like, I don't know why I needed candles. Like, I didn't expect the power to go out where I need candles for that. Like, I had a specific need for them at the time being, but what the heck? And my wife loves a dollar store, so it worked out. She's like, "Oh yeah, great, let's do it. I love a dollar store." Okay. So we went to the dollar store, and she immediately went to like the decorations and all the fun stuff like that section, and I kind of made a beeline to the candles and was looking on the shelves, and on the shelves they had all the different colors of candles and things, and I saw there was a pink one and a white one that kind of jumped out at me, and I'm like, I kind of like the pink one, the white one. I'm not really sure why I like them, but I kind of think I should get those two. And obviously being the dollar store, it's a couple bucks to get them, so
Yeah,
grabbed them off the
dollar store is
shelf.
not a dollar anymore. It's like $2.
Unfortunately, well, I mean, here it's like $1.25 now, I think, is what they're doing it.
Okay.
But I'm sure in California it's like
Yeah,
450 or something. The 450 store, maybe the 5 spot, maybe that's what it is for you guys, the 5 spot.
yeah.
So yeah, so I had no idea what these were for, didn't have a need for them, didn't know what I was going to do with them, except something just said, pink one, white one looks great, go ahead and get them. Okay. So, and this is something that I know some people talk about. They maybe hear a little voice or something or whatever. For me, this just kind of, it was the best case I explain is a little bit of a knowing. I just kind of knew I needed to have them. I didn't hear a voice says, "Get me, get me, get me." Nothing like that. It was just some sort of a sense that that's what I needed to do. So, so I picked the candles, took them home. No idea what I was going to do with them. Set them on my shelf. About a week or so later, sitting there kind of staring, I was like, that pink candle, I think I really need to light that for somebody. Like, there's somebody that needs to express some gratitude for. I think that pink one should be for that person. Okay, I've got the pink candle. I had nothing else to do with it, so yeah, why not? So we went and lit the candle and gave gratitude for that specific person. And as I lit the candle, still had the white one on the shelf. Still didn't know what needed to do with it. And that candle's been on the shelf, and it's still sitting there on the shelf right now, until yesterday. So yesterday, someone mentioned something specific that all of a sudden I had this like, oh yeah, I need to light this candle and burn it for this other person and show them gratitude as well. Seemed perfect, white. I need white for them, seemed to be ideal. It just, again, I had nothing I was going to do with it otherwise. I didn't know what it was for. So I'm like, you know what? This must be what that candle was for. So this weekend I will be lighting that candle for this individual and giving them gratitude. And again, same thing, didn't hear a little voice. It was just something when I saw somebody post that statement, it triggered in my head, light that candle for this person. And I know we've talked about this before, but it's something that I don't know why. I don't know why the connection was there. I don't know. All I know is that it popped up in my head that time. And so I'm going to follow it, and we're going to light that candle this weekend.
Well, and I think that's a great example, and I want to kind of tear it apart, not tear it apart, but talk about it.
Break it down.
You break it down. Break it down. Break it down. Right. Got to use the right words. Break dance time. Because I think sometimes I get a sense from people that they believe that they're going to hear some audible voice, like, Jason, this is God, you need to do this, right? And it's like, that's not how it happens. I think we've talked before about silence, and how usually it kind of comes through in more the stillness, right? When we quiet ourselves down. But I thought this is interesting, because again, people are like, well, I don't know, is that a sign from the universe? Well, obviously Brad found out that it was, right? Now, at the time that he did it, he didn't know. Sometimes you receive guidance and you just do it, and you find out why later. Usually, sometimes we don't, right? But you just, when you receive the guidance, you follow the guidance, and you know when you know, right? But I thought it was interesting, right? Because again, as we sit there and think about this, right? I know you mentioned your wife loves the dollar store.
Hmm.
Brad, do you love going to the dollar store?
Not particularly.
Nope.
Like it's not.
I was kind of getting that sense, right? So it's not like, I mean, if this was something that Brad was like all over, like, oh, I've got to go to the dollar store every week. And then he drives up and he's like, I got to go to the dollar store. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not a sign at that point, right? But because it was a little out of the ordinary, right? Then it's like, oh, pay attention, right? And the fact that he gets kind of two messages, like, go to the dollar store, you need candles. Huh, that's weird. Brad, do you buy candles all the time?
No,
No.
but another layer to this story that I forgot to mention is so yesterday I got a haircut for what's left there to cut. And I happened to see a pull, I had to get the directions and stuff and the fastest way to get there, and happened to notice that there was a metaphysical store a block away from where my barber is. And so I was like, oh, cool. Maybe they've got something fun in there, go see if anything talks to me, calls to me, whatever, we'll go in. So I went in there and kind of walked around, and they had a display of candles, and specifically the white one kind of jumped out at me, and I didn't get it because I'm thinking I don't really need a candle. I've got that other white one at home yet. Like it's just sitting there. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. Um, and so I walked out and left without getting that candle. But that when I was there, I was drawn, as seems so dramatic about it, but like that caught my attention as I was walking through that candle and the candle display and stuff.
Well, no, but I think again, let's talk about some of these words, right? Because you said drawn,
Mm-hmm.
right? Jumped out, right? So again, I mean, because I have some of these same kind of experiences, right? I mean, so you went to the dollar store the first time, they had a whole bunch of different colors,
Yep.
but for some reason the white one and the pink one stuck in your mind,
Mm.
or they kind of jumped out at you a little bit, right?
Yep.
And so, again, it's like, okay, that's again another little nudge. I mean, there were, I don't know, 10, 15 different colors probably to choose from. Why all of a sudden do you feel like I need white and pink? It's probably something from the universe telling you that, right? Now, again, I'm in the metaphysical shop the other day. I don't know if you should have bought another one, if you shouldn't have, I don't know. Maybe it was just a reminder to put your attention on that white candle, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you found out what to do with the white candle after you went to the metaphysical shop,
Yes. Yeah. It was yesterday evening where
right?
that.
Where that
Yep.
popped into you.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's one of those areas, like, don't shit on yourself like I should have bought the candle. Maybe that whole experience was just to bring that white candle back into your awareness, so then you could get the download later that night, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I think both of those show kind of a pattern that goes along with it, right? Now, then when you found out why, right, and you knew, well, now you can look back, right? Because again, I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when we get these messages, at first we kind of doubt ourselves, like, well, did I really get a message about a pink and white candle, right? And sometimes we kind of doubt ourselves, but then later when you get the evidence of why, now it makes it easier to turn back around and go, okay, hold it. How did I feel when I thought I should go to the dollar store? And all of a sudden I had this thought about candles. And then I get in there and the pink and the white one jump out at me. How did I feel? What did I know? Right. And knowing is another word. What jumped out at me? What did I feel drawn to? because literally sometimes it's like you're being pulled. If you haven't had that situation, it's a weird feeling. Right? Like literally somebody, threw a lasso around you and is kind of like pulling you someplace, right? And again, everybody experiences these things differently. So the way Brad experiences it may not necessarily be the way that you experience it. You might hear a voice. You might see like a light around the candle or
An
something
aura or
like
something.
that, an aura, something that makes it specifically stand out to you, right? Everybody's different
Hmm.
on what it is. I mean, I've talked before, I get signs like that a lot of times from songs, right? And again, it'll just a line in the song will pop in my head, and then I go and listen to it, and sure enough, there's some lyric in that song that popped out and that had meaning to me later, right? So now when songs like that pop into my head, especially first thing in the morning, I go and do it.
Yeah. And I've had different sensation, and it's not just like the knowing, the popping in my head is kind of the most common, but um so one of the first times I actually went, and it was not this one, but a different medical physical shop, um I kind of walked around. I was like, I was, for some reason something said I should go into it. Walked around, nothing really jumped out at me. Walked around a second time, thought, well, maybe the people are looking at me funny. I'm just kind of walking around going in circles around the store, but didn't really feel anything until like, is there like something here I'm supposed to be for? Like, what's the deal? And so, so I walked around, I don't know whether it was the third or fourth time, and I got to a certain spot in the store, and all of a sudden I felt warm. Literally, I felt warm. Like, you're like, oh, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer. I literally felt warm as I stood there, and I kind of sat there and looked around. And I was like, whoa, like, this just hit me all of a sudden. And I looked down, and there was a display case, and inside there were specific crystals in there. And my head kind of went to one in particular, which I would have never drawn my attention, thought of. I would have picked out if I was just looking necessarily, but like that just caught my head. And I was like, all right, that must be what I'm here for. Um, and I still don't know exactly what that's for. I've had that now for 3 years, 2 years, and it's sitting on my sitting back here actually on my bookshelf. Still don't know what it's for,
So
but
what crystal is it?
it is actually. Let me get it. It is this little guy.
Cranium.
Is a cranium
Quartz on the top. What's on the bottom? Do you know
with
what
a
the bottom
quartz.
what the bottom
Yeah, some just
crystal is?
stone. Yeah, but like a quartz kind of mohawk sort of a spiky thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we won't talk about that on the air, but I might. Well, we can talk about that after we stop hitting record, right? Because that'd be between Brad and me. But anyway,
The after show. So, yeah.
the after show.
Yeah. You have to pay to get that one, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but so there again, there's a different way that you felt it, which I think is important, right, for people to realize or to start placing some attention and awareness on, right? You actually
Mhm.
felt physically warm,
Yep.
right? So one thing, everybody that's listening is, how do you feel? So maybe what sensations do you have in your body? Are you feeling warm? Are you feeling cold? Or is something, does something change, or something is a little bit different than normal? Do you all of a
Mhm.
sudden feel a pain somewhere that you normally don't, right? It's any of these kinds of things like that. And then you start placing awareness on it, following what you think is trying to tell you to do. And then when you get the evidence of it, then you're like, right. So next time Brad is in a store and he's walking around and all of a sudden he feels warm, he's not going to be like, oh my gosh, this menopause in my hot flash. No, it's like, hey, the universe is trying to tell me something, right? And same thing, you look down at the display case and one of those specific crystals just kind of jumped out at you, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And
so
we're
it's kind
so
of
talking
similar.
about, yeah, talking about those feelings. Yeah. Again, the warmth. So again, we're just gonna have all kinds of examples out in the show apparently today.
Well,
So
that's the best way, because again,
yeah,
people,
exactly.
it doesn't happen the same way to us every single time either. So that's why we're just trying to
Yeah.
share some of the ways that it's happened to us, so you can start thinking about, well, does that happen to me, or
Hmm.
what are some different things that maybe happen to me, so you can start tuning in to how you receive.
Right. Yeah. So this past fall, we went on vacation to Asheville, North Carolina, and um, we went into. I feel like all my stories revolve around like crystal shops. I don't know. So we went to a particular shop. Everything
Welcome
was
to the world, man.
yeah. So everything was going fine. Walking around, and my wife and daughter kind of were like, "All right, well, if you're gonna keep on looking around, we're gonna go outside or whatnot." So I'm walking around, and all of a sudden, I just felt like I was an oppressive heat. So not like a just like, oh, look, kind of a warm, like it's a warm feel, but like something was like pushing down on me and I had to get out of there. So as soon as I felt that, I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of this place. Like there's just something here that's not. I walked out of the store, and as soon as I crossed over the threshold out into outside the door, I felt a breath of fresh air, cool air, and I felt much better all of a sudden. And so that was again a sign for me that I need to get out of there. Maybe it was
No,
to save me from spending
and
money.
I
But
have had those same experiences, right? Where
yeah,
sometimes you'll go into a certain place and you just feel off. You might feel a heat, you might feel a pressure, you might feel a sickness to your stomach,
yeah,
you might feel a headache come on, instantly. There's a lot of different ways that it might show up. But again, that was a sign, Brad, get out of that store. There's something in there that some reason you should not be in there. Get out.
yeah.
Right. And I've had those same experiences as well. Right. Um, but I think it's interesting. And I think, did we talk about my rings too? I think we talked about my rings on one of the other ones, but
No, we have
I can't.
not
We
actually.
have not. Oh, because you
No,
asked me about my new, what do you
I
call it,
did ask you about your.
ring candy or finger candy.
That's right.
So this is another example of what we're talking about with the signs, right? Is this is probably, I don't know, a month or two ago. Time doesn't even really matter because time doesn't exist. But we try to put
That's another
a
episode, dude.
that's
Stop.
another episode, but we try to put a reference on it. So it was probably a couple months ago. I was with a group of people and somebody was talking about a ring that they had that they were wearing. And they're like, guess how much do you think this cost? Right. Because they were trying to make a point about like value shopping. And it was a pretty good size ring, pristine crystal, that normally would be like $5,000, $10,000 potentially for this size. It's like 10
Mm.
carats. And the person was like, nope, $350, Oceanside Antique Mall. And it was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. But the whole idea of look for value. A lot of times, places like antique malls, pawn shops, some of the other places like that, you can find certain things, right? So it was a spiritual tool for this person as well, but at a great value, right? And so
Mhm.
again, it was like, well, that was a nice story. That was kind of a fun story,
Sure.
whatever, right? And so I heard that story, and I come back home, and later that week, usually on the weekends, I have honeydews that I have to do, or there's places we have to go, or stuff like that, right? So I rarely have like a whole day to just do whatever I want to do. And for some reason, I think it was on a Saturday, I had the whole day to myself. And it's like, huh, what am I going to do? Right. I have this whole day. What should I do with my day? And all of
Possibilities are
this
endless.
possibilities are endless. All of a sudden, that story that I was told pops into my head. And Oceanside's about, hour and a half ish away from where I live. Uh, and all of a sudden, that story kind of popped into my head. And a Denny's that's halfway between popped into my head. And it's like,
Pancakes. Yeah, I get you.
yeah, it's like, okay, I guess I need to get up Saturday morning and drive down to Oceanside and stop at the Denny's and have breakfast on my way down, right? And what am I going to do in Oceanside? I don't know, but let me see if I can find that antique mall this person was talking about, right? And so I didn't have a plan. I just, got up, went down, had breakfast, drove on down because I'd never actually been out in Oceanside itself. I'd always just kind of driven through on the freeway on the way to San Diego. And so I had no clue where this place was going to be or if I would ever even find it. So I just drove, I got off. I'm like, it's probably on PCH. It's kind of the main highway that's right there, road. It's a road through town there. It's not really a highway per se, but and so I was just driving along and I'm like looking at the different signs for the businesses. It's like, what jumps out at me? And boom, this one kind of jumped out at me. It's like, okay, well, I'll come back to that. Right. And so I just keep kind of going down and I'm like, haven't really found what I wanted. So I pulled off into a service station and I'm like, maybe I should pull my phone up and just kind of look at, on the maps, what the places are that are right around there. And so I pull open my map and I start zooming in, and guess what? Literally right next door to the service station was an antique mall. But it looked like it was in a business building, like an office building. It didn't look like a retail storefront.
Yeah.
So I went in there and I wandered around. I found a few things and that felt like I needed to get. So I got those. And was like, all right, well, check out some other ones. So I ended up hitting like 3 or 4 different places while I was down there. And there was this one that there were 2 of them side by side. And so I was drawn to the one on the left-hand side. And so I went up and it was closed. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I went into the one on the right, looked around, didn't really find anything in there that I liked, came back out. Now the one on the left was open, right? So I'm like, okay, go in, talk to the lady, nice lady, start looking around at the different things. I don't really know what I'm looking for. I was actually looking for one particular thing, but she didn't really have it. And then she's like, well, these just came in this week. And she pulled out first off this ring, which I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. And I was kind of looking for one for my pointer finger. And when she handed it to me, I felt a little electric rush in my body, right? When she handed it to me, and I actually held on to it. And then she brought out this other one, right? Here we go. You get the middle finger because middle finger ring. And so she brought this one out. And I was like, oh. And she put it in my hand. Way bigger electric kind of shock of energy that I felt when I physically touched this ring. And so there I am sitting here looking at these like, well, isn't that interesting? Now, the fact that they came in a few days before I showed up, they fit my fingers exactly, right? And she made me a heck of a deal for both of them, right? That was, again, I'm learning why I have these, right? And part of it is some gemology because, turquoise that I wanted to do more work with. But that was one where I actually had more of a physical sensation too, right? But it was different. It wasn't that I was hot, but I just felt kind of the energy rush in my body like I sometimes do when I'm asking for guidance or trying to confirm things, right? And like I said, it was smaller for the one ring, but it was much bigger for the other one, right? To knowing that, okay, I know I have to walk away with this one, right? And it's like she made me a deal for both of them, and it's like, hey, I felt both of them, so I'm getting both of them, right? But that's another experience that I had, right? Again, now there were little steps along the way, right? It's like, why should I go to Oceanside? I don't know. You don't know until you know,
Pretty
right?
place this time of year, I
It's
guess.
a pretty place, went down, saw the ocean, just sat there and watched. I mean, it was nice, but it was apparent afterwards there was a reason why I was told that story a week before. There was a reason why it came back into my mind. There was a reason why, that Denny's flashed into my mind. And again, it wasn't like a visual flash, but it was like a knowing of, oh, there's a Denny's on the way, right? Um, or even of seeing the different businesses jump out at me, or the different things like that, right? Is that, and I was kind of wandering around the whole time going, why am I here? What is it that I'm supposed to pick up? Right. And I found some other things too, but that felt right that I got, but again, the rings were more of a physical feeling, that sometimes ends up being a different way that you might get a sign from the universe.
Hmm. They wanted to come home with you.
They wanted to come home with me. They've been very happy ever since. And maybe I talked to them. Maybe
I
I
would
don't.
expect nothing less from you, Jason. I would expect nothing less.
So,
So
yeah.
how do we know then that some of these things aren't just things we're making up? Like, how do we know that, like, the feel like that going to the candle place, the dollar store for the candles wasn't just me wanting to make my wife happy because she wanted to go in, or that you just wanted to go get pancakes that morning, you were hungry, and so that's what took you down to Ocean's? Like, how do we know that these things are actually some messages that we should be kind of paying attention to versus just something that's kind of in our head that we're coming up with ourselves? That's one of the questions I always have,
Well, and
especially starting out on this path.
I think too, right? Some of it kind of goes back to is it normal and ordinary, or is it something out of the blue? I normally don't eat breakfast, right? I get up, I drink water, I have coffee, but I don't usually eat breakfast. So the fact that all of a sudden this day I felt like going to have breakfast was different. It was something that wasn't in the norm. If I went out to breakfast every Saturday morning and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got to go to IHOP tomorrow, that might not be a message from the universe. But the fact that I normally don't eat breakfast, and it's like, do you know how many Denny's I had to drive by to get to that one, an hour away? Right? Like, I'm gonna go to Denny's, to have pancakes, or I can't even remember what I had. I don't need to drive an hour to go to a Denny's there. Why was I thinking about that particular place? Right. So, again, just like, you know, yeah, your wife likes to go to the dollar store. You don't particularly like to go, but you'll go with her, or you might mention to her, hey, do you want to go? But you knew there was a different reason why you were going, right? Because you even said that. Oh, you need some candles. Oh, little out of the ordinary, right? A little
Mhm.
different. I think too, some of these feelings or the thoughts that we have, it's not normal for you to go into a store and all of a sudden feel a little nice, cozy, warm sensation when you stand in a particular place in the store. That's
Mhm.
not normal. And so when you start to notice things that are out of the ordinary, pay attention, right? Because usually those things are trying to tell you something. If you've looked at a billboard on the side of the freeway and it's the same billboard, and all of a sudden you look up at it one day and it seems different to you, maybe there's something to pay attention to.
Maybe just a different billboard. They just new ad there.
No,
But
I'm meaning like the same one, right?
mhm.
Because a lot of times, there will be the same billboard that you just drive by and it doesn't even mean anything to you, but all of a sudden on that one particular day, whatever phrase is up there might mean something different to you, right? Or I'll give you an example. I was driving through Phoenix a little while ago, and was on an exchange turning, and I looked up, and there was a bald eagle. Now, again, bald eagles can be anywhere in the U.S., but you normally don't see one flying in a metropolitan area.
Mhm.
That was a sign that meant something to me, right? And again, it had a personal reason, animal medicine, some other stuff. What's interesting is when I was in that same area a couple of months later, there was this big construction truck, like a guy that, like some kind of a roofing contractor or whatever. And guess what was
Mhm.
painted big and bold on the whole side of the truck? Bald eagle head, at almost the exact same place where I saw a bald eagle flying a couple of months before, right? When you see things like that that are out of the ordinary, when you see, I think we talked, maybe we talked before a little bit when we were talking about animal medicine, is when you see three of
Mhm.
the same animal together, pay attention, because three is a significant number in numerology, and most animals don't go around in groups of three. You'll see them in
Third wheel,
ones,
it's just awkward for the
ones
third
or
one. Like,
ones. Yeah, it's
yeah,
three's company, right? Or if the three's a crowd, right?
there you go. Yeah.
But it's unusual to see that, right? Or if it's normal, well, I'll give you another example. Is we don't live too far away from a big park, but we don't have like big trees right here in our subdivision. And so there are squirrels that are in the area, but we never usually see squirrels at our house. And so one morning I'm sitting out back, and a squirrel comes running along the fence. Different, right? Now, not completely out of the ordinary. Squirrels live here, but it's unusual for me to see a squirrel at this house. One of the houses I had in Boise, we had squirrels every day, and I'd sit there and look at them,
At
listen
my
to them
window, I've
do
got
it.
squirrels. Yeah.
You've got squirrels there all the time, right? So if you saw a squirrel, it's not necessarily out of the ordinary, but for me, it was. Now, that was earlier in the day. Later, I go out to run an errand. I'm driving back home, and literally, what runs out in front of me, and I have to slow down so I don't hit it? A squirrel.
Or
So what did I do when I first got home? Pulled out my book, and I looked up squirrel medicine, and it's like, squirrel is trying to tell me something today. What is it trying to tell me? Right?
gathering.
Yeah. Those are the kinds of things, right, that you're looking for. Is it a little bit out of the ordinary? Is it maybe answering a question that you have? Um, yeah, the more we start paying attention, the more we start to see things that are different.
And again, I think, at least for me, it just kind of comes down to what feels right. And I use feeling here as in just a sense of, yeah, that seems right. Like I maybe I can't explain it. Maybe I don't know why something is I'm drawn to it or feeling a certain way, or whatever, but it just kind of feels right. Like this is what needs to happen. And that's kind of a way for me. And then something that you kind of referred back to is then looking back, and you can kind of see the patterns too. And maybe this is a good way to kind of verify to yourself that there was really something there, is you kind of look back and say, well, I usually don't eat breakfast. So I had the Denny's, and I heard about the story about the shop, and you can kind of work back through these, and like, well, I can see the steps now. I can see why this all makes sense.
Well, and the more that we do it, the more that we practice it, the
Mhm.
more that you kind of tune in to how these come to you. Um, because again, what Brad and I just explained may not come to you in that
Mhm.
way, or you may experience some of the different ways that we've shared. Because it's not always the same for us either.
Mhm.
Right. But the more that you do it, the more you kind of look back and go, that did seem to be a sign. So how was I feeling when that happened? Or what was going on? What was I thinking about at that time? Right. And you start to kind of piece it together so that now when you encounter the same things again, and you listen. Right. I
Mhm.
mean, when Brad walks in a store and all of a sudden he has that warm kind of nice feeling, he's going to pay attention. It's like, what is it about this part of the store that I need?
Mhm.
Right. And something is probably going to pop out at you. Right. Same thing. If you get that oppressive kind of like heat pressure sort
Mhm.
of feeling, you're going to know, I just need to get out.
Right.
Right. And the more you do it, the more you tune, the more you're aware of it, the more you kind of do the look back and you learn from it, the better you're going to get at at understanding it. It's like you're learning a new language, right?
I like that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
The first few times, I mean, we all make mistakes. We mispronounce things we don't quite understand, but the more you do it, the more you practice it, the more you become attuned to it, the easier it is for you to listen, right? And so I'll
Mhm.
give you an example too, right? Like I used to travel to Africa quite a bit, and the places I would go speak English, right? English is the official language, so everybody was speaking English, or for the most part could speak English where I was at. But the cadence and the intonation is different in different parts of Africa, different than it is here in the United States, right? And so it would take me, the first day or two of me being there to start to kind of tune into the intonation. They were still speaking English, but I had to get used to the cadence and the rhythm that they were talking to. Once I tuned into it, then I could understand it much easier. And it's the same thing here, right? The more you tune into it, the more you kind of understand, the more you kind of practice and play with it, the easier it's going to be for you to understand, or at least to get the guidance. And then we usually don't find out why until later. So you just have to trust and follow the guidance, and you'll find out when you find out. But when you do find out, then that just gives you more evidence that what you did was a good thing. And so do more of that.
Yeah, and that's really hard for professionals, particularly, because we like evidence. I know as a lawyer, we like everything's going to be evidence based. What can I prove? What can I see? What can I analytically figure out? And when it comes to this kind of stuff, you can't do that. Like you don't oftentimes don't know why something is until down the road. Like I didn't know why I needed those candles until the reason kind of popped in my head. And if I'd have been like, well, I need to have evidence of what these candles are for. I need to have a plan. Like I need to know exactly what I'm going to use them for, when I'm going to use them, because maybe if I don't need them until next week, they might be on sale. So I'm not going to get them. Like if you start going down that rabbit hole,
It's like, Brad,
like
it's $3. Just buy the candles. It's $3.
no, it's $1.25 here, Jason.
That's right.
It's
So dollar
it's not
25 times two, 250.
there you
Yeah,
go.
250.
Exactly.
Right. But just play with it a little bit too, right? I mean, it's like, you know, why not just have fun with it? It's just $2.50.
Mhm.
So if people are getting in their head about it, it's like, well, I don't know, just try it, right? And if it turns out, that it wasn't good, you didn't really waste any money. But it's until you practice and play with it, right? You're not going to understand, or you're not going to see. And so I think, again, and that's a good point, probably for us to kind of end on here is, you got to play with it. You got to try it. You got to have a little faith, if you will, right? But the fact that you're listening to us means that you probably already have some of that, right? It's just the conditioning from being a lawyer, a CPA, or a doctor, or whatever, that makes you want to kind of knee-jerk react back to that, but just play
Same.
with it. Play with it and see what happens. Because like I said, I've been playing with this long enough now that when I'm in tune and those things happen, I just do it. And I've gotten to the point to where I'm doing things, and sometimes it can be a little scary because I have no fucking clue why I'm doing it and it doesn't make any sense. But I just have to do it because I feel like I have to do it, and I will understand later. You only understand later, right?
If at all.
If at all. And we may not understand until we leave this body, but you have to do it first. So you got to play with it. You got to try it. You got to practice it. You got to see how it works for you, or else you'll just continue to be stuck in your head and just not do it at all.
We're missing out on good deals on rings and
exactly, and candles, and what else did we talk about? The skull, yeah, too. So anyway,
but it's not all about buying things. I think we should make that clear.
no,
It's not
no,
all
no,
about
no.
things you need to buy. Like there are other stuff as well, but that's just the easiest examples that came to mind.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
So, well, this was a heck of an episode. I mean, this has been one of my favorite ones we've gone through to, and I think is going to be really helpful to others who are listening to have kind of hear these examples and be able to see how maybe they can take this and apply this to what they're experiencing and going through. And if we'd had more time, if we had thought about it, we could have set up a game and played message or just your head, and that would have been really fun too.
Well, we've got future episodes.
But maybe
games.
that will be a future episode. We'll play. Is it a message from the universe, or is it just something in my head? Am I just going crazy? So stay tuned for that. Make sure you tune in next week. You never know.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks everybody. And again, realize there are signs everywhere if you're looking. And the more you tune in, the more you play with it, the more you're going to understand how those signs are coming through to you and what they actually mean. So have a great week, everybody. I guess we'll see you on our next episode.
see you then.